Hi, and welcome to Portfolio Know-How, making the most of what you got. My name is Kay Elling, and I'll be talking to you today about what makes a really good portfolio and also some of the things that we look at in portfolios, as do everybody else, and what they might be thinking about your work. So first of all, I'm going to talk about my background and why you can trust me on this, but then I'm going to say who needs a portfolio and why, and also what makes a really powerful portfolio. I'll also be talking about some of the dangers that you might face in creating a portfolio because it does send some secondary messages. And we're also going to talk about what your portfolio says about you and how to fix it. And finally, I'm going to go through 3 golden rules for making a AAA portfolio. I wanted it to be 3 A words, but only got to 2. So we're going for accessibility, awesomeness, and neatness. So first of all, what is my background? Well, I've been in the creative industries for a long time. I worked as a games character artist, art manager, and project manager for about 13 years. I started off as a 2D artist and then became a 3D artist, and you can see some of my work here, as well as all of the games that I had published back in the day. So some of you might have been young enough to actually play some of those ones for kids. If not, ask your parents, they've probably played some of my games. But my point about this is that I've actually spent so much time looking at portfolios, both as an artist and a manager, but also working in university education like I do now. So I reckon, quick back of the envelope calculation is that I've done about 1,500 portfolio reviews, and that's probably being conservative. So I know about portfolios from artists, from technical people, from people like game designers, and also web developers. So I've seen kind of the full gamut of these. In higher education, I now teach mostly on art courses, which includes games art, also a little bit of animation and game design, but mostly I work with concept artists these days. And because I'm an artist, some of the examples that I'm going to show you are from my own portfolio, and therefore they are art-based. However, that does not mean that it's not going to be relevant for you and you can't use some of these ideas, even if you are more technical. So who needs a portfolio and why? And the answer is everybody. Everyone, not just artists. And this is because a portfolio shows off your achievements in a really tangible way. It's all very well writing about them and doing your kind of statements and things like that, but people want to really see what you've done, what kind of outputs you've got, what skills you have, and what experience you have, even if it's not very much. But also, portfolios are really important because they help the person who's viewing it see beyond the surface, kind of look behind the mask. And that means that we want to see how you think and you work creatively. Even if you're a technical creative person, you're still creative, and we want to see how that kind of works for you. But also we want to see if you're improving or what you're working on right now. It's always good to have something contemporary, something that's happening right now in your portfolio. But also, do they think that you're ready to take that next step? And the way that you can really prove this is with your portfolio. And because of that, this makes portfolios a really powerful medium in which to show off who you are and what you can do, but it also makes them a little bit dangerous, and there'll be more on that later. So let's talk about powerful portfolios then. What makes your portfolio really powerful? Well, first of all, you want to be able to show off your brand. And your brand is generally who you are as a creative person or somebody who works. So it could be that you're a generalist. I'm absolutely a generalist. I've worked in so many industries and have done so many different things that I am a generalist. But it could be that you're more of a specialist, or that crucially you want to be seen as a specialist because you want to go to a specialist course or maybe work in a specialist kind of job. So good portfolios and powerful portfolios are also tailored to the end user. So who is the end user? Who's going to be reviewing this? And also, what do they want to see? And crucially, what do they want to see first? And that's what you have to show them first. Powerful portfolios are also accessible and free from clutter. So when I say accessible, I generally mean they're easy to get to, such as they are online. You don't necessarily have to email out PDFs or, memory sticks or exes or that kind of stuff to people. You want people to be able to just click on a short link and get to your work straight away. But free from clutter generally means that less is more. So the less you have in your portfolio, the more powerful it can be, even though that feels like it might be the wrong way around. Powerful portfolios are also really up to date because they're just a snapshot in time, and the idea is that you will constantly work on your portfolio and put pieces of new work in as old work gets out of date, and you will do that for all of your creative career. So people will understand if you're right at the start of that you're not going to have a huge amount to show, or that you might just be able to show the general stuff that you've done, and that you might not be a specialist yet because they know that it's a constantly evolving thing. So I'm guessing you might be asking, well, that's great, but what goes in a portfolio? And a lot of it will depend on your specialism or your generalist skills or what it is that you're trying to show off. But there are some things that everyone can do to put things in a portfolio, to go through a process that's just really clean and wins every time. So the way we do this is that we curate our portfolios in stages, and curation means to select, organise or present a body of work. Very much like a curator in a museum selects only the best pieces, you're selecting the best pieces of your work. And that does start with the most relevant work, not necessarily the best thing you've ever done. So it could be that you have one piece of work that's absolutely brilliant, but it's not really relevant, but it's so good you want to put it in anyway. Yes, you might want to put it in if you're a generalist, but actually the first thing you do is select your most relevant stuff, and that relevance is decided by who the end user is. So who's going to be reviewing your portfolio? Is it a particular course? Is it a particular set of courses? Is it something that's going for a particular job or a particular sector or industry? Think about what they want to see and make sure you've got that in there. The next step is to look at all your most relevant work and to weed out all of the bad stuff. And so you start off with quite a bit and then you take things away. And that's because you don't want to dilute the message. Each piece of work that you put in is going to send a message about a particular piece of software or a particular skill set that you have or something that you've got experience with. And if you have lots of pieces of work that say the same thing, eventually some of those pieces of work are not going to be as good as others, and they start to dilute the message, and that's really what you don't want to do. As I said before, less is more. So taking out some of this stuff means that it's actually easier for people to get in and see what they really need to see about your work. So what you're doing there is you're not repeating the message, because you don't want to say the same thing again. You don't want the person who's looking at your portfolio to understand that you have a particular technical skill, and here it is again, and here it is again, and here it is again. You don't necessarily want that, because if you do that, you're just repeating the message and the person will get bored and go, yeah, whatever, show me something new. Now, it is good to put in one of your latest works or work in progress and to label it as such. And that is because it says, hey, look at me, I'm still working on this, I'm constantly improving. And that is what any employer or any university or college or anyone that you're sort of applying to will want to see, is that you're constantly working on this and that you're improving the whole time. Now, if your latest piece of work is not looking great, it's okay not to put that in, because if there is great work and not so great work in the same portfolio, you may get asked to interview which is the most recent, and if it is the not so great work, that doesn't look like you're improving. So sometimes it's better to hide that. And also get a review from someone who knows portfolios in this area. So it could be your tutors, it could be industry people. Industry people are absolutely brilliant for giving you a portfolio review because it helps you to stay objective. You need to be objective about your work, even though it's a very subjective area, and it can be really intimidating to show your stuff to your peers or to an expert in that area. Now, this is where we get onto the danger part. So I mentioned danger. The thing about portfolios, as you're probably starting to understand, is that it's not just about what's in the portfolio itself. A portfolio is actually a performance. It's a performance of those things that we often call soft skills. Things like communication or being able to critically evaluate your own work, for example. These are skills that you need to develop, and that's why having a portfolio can help you develop those on an ongoing basis. But you also need to develop your eye for quality so that you're constantly looking at what's better, what's worse, what hits a particular industry or kind of benchmark of your stages if you're at college. And also, it's about how you manage your information, how you manage your data, and how you present your work, because you're not going to be there when someone looks at your portfolio. It has to speak on your behalf. So you need to have it absolutely shipshape and ready to go. Also, it's about marketing you as a brand. And most importantly, how your brand as an individual, as a creative person, as somebody who's going to work or study, how that might be compatible with the brand of who you're trying to reach. So you can say to people, hey, look, I'm totally in tune with you as a brand. You know, you can use me and slot me into your company really well, or look at the stuff that I do. This is the kind of stuff that I'm going to be doing on my course. So I've already had a bit of a head start in this area. And therefore, it is a performance. So it's really important to think about this as a performance, because you do not want to fluff this performance, because it's going to be out there on the internet for quite some time. So what does it look like then? Well, here are some things that your portfolio might say about you and how we can fix them. So for example, one of the biggest problems that I see quite a lot is too much work. And generally, if you have too much work, it says that you don't really know who you are or what you're best at. You're just throwing everything sort of online and hoping something will stick. It also says that you can't tell the difference between good and bad work, or that you can't manage your information efficiently. And of course, that is a bit of an issue. Now, okay, if you're an industry veteran, if you're someone like me who's been around for 26 years of doing various creative things, you're going to have a much bigger portfolio than you are for someone who's just starting out. But even then, organisation is really important, and you have to organise it either by the most recent work or put the priority projects first. So try not to have too much work. How you fix it? Do another one of those curation passes. Sort through your work. Start by looking at type, lots of different types of work, or how new it is. So don't show the old work if you've done something new that's better. Or you could set yourself a hard limit, and that's a really good idea. So try not to have more than 15 items of anything in your portfolio, because no one's going to have time to go through huge amounts of work. The opposite problem is not having enough work. And we see this all the time, particularly if there's a very large space and not much in it, and especially if it's not laid out very well. And that can say things like, I just haven't done any, or I'm not committed to my work, or I can't finish a task, or I don't manage my information. This is the kind of thing that we get from portfolios with not enough stuff in them. How do you fix it? Well, do another curation pass of all your work. What else might be relevant? There could be something that's kind of tangential that you might not think is completely relevant, but has some cool skills on it. But also, not everything in your portfolio has to be a finished, final, polished thing. It can be a work in progress, or you can break up big projects into progress images, or progress blogs, or interim builds, prototypes, that kind of thing. Because sometimes we like to see your process as well. Sketchbook pages are always welcome. If you're an artist, doesn't matter what kind, whether it's digital, traditional, just show a page of sketchbook pages and go, sketchbook. People will love that kind of stuff. And if all else fails, make the work bigger to fit the space, or make the space smaller to fit the work. If you're a programmer who's only really worked on one particular game prototype, then make sure that prototype fills the screen, or that you've got loads of little things that people can click on to see the progress of your work. Maybe you've done a blog or something like that. That's all really great stuff, because that tells people how you work and how your process is. Another thing that we see is poor work in with good work. And usually that says, I don't know if I'm successful. I can't really tell that. It also says that maybe you don't have enough work to choose from, like we saw before. Or also, are you getting better or worse? Because that means the risk is all ours when we look at the portfolio, because we can't tell whether you're getting better or not. So this is actually quite a scary one. Now, the way you fix it is to just take a real honest look at that poor work. Do you have other work that shows those skills? And again, you need to do that curation pass of just taking another cycle of looking at your work and see if you've done it better elsewhere. Because there could be that there's parts of one project and parts of another that you can put together. If you've got work of a similar kind or type that isn't the best, get rid of that. That's the less is more approach. But You know, if you have some work that has some good bits, try to edit out those bad bits so people can't see them and fill in the gaps with other work. So like I've shown in the example here with the horse, if you can't draw a great horse from start to finish, just show us the parts that you can draw well, because the reader will assume that the other bits are in there. So actually some of this is a little bit sleight of hand. So another thing that we get to see, particularly for artists, but also for technical people who are taking screenshots of their work, would be that scans are either poor, or you're taking photos with your phone and you're not cropping them, or that the resolution is really low. This is particularly problematic if you're doing stuff for mobile screens, or if you're doing things for generally low resolution digital formats. And this says, I don't value my work enough to show it off properly, so why should you? I'm sloppy and I don't pay attention to detail. We all have days when we're just making tons of mistakes, but we need to make sure that they're not in a portfolio. It also says, I lack basic presentation skills, so don't ever put me in front of a client or other stakeholder. This is what the person who's reading your portfolio is going to think about when they see stuff that is badly rotated and cropped and ugly, or shows the binding or the margins are wrong, or it's really dark and they're in a brightly lit office and they can't see anything. You need to check this stuff. So how do you fix it? Well, if you're doing artwork, use a scanner, not a phone, wherever possible, to get the best quality image. Or if you are using a phone to take a picture, make sure that it's indistinguishable from a scan. If you're using your phone, you will absolutely have access to editing and cropping and straightening and managing tone and contrast. All phones now have this ability on their cameras to put some filters on, not the really crazy ones, but just the ones that neaten up an image and make it more visible. Also, use the highest possible resolution wherever you can, especially because creative types tend to have very high spec monitors or tablets, so they tend to have much higher resolutions than other people do. So if you can get something in 4K, put it up there. Also, avoid showing the binding unless it's a full sketchbook double page spread. So if it's a sketchbook and it's meant to be a sort of rough and ready work in progress, absolutely have that binding on there. If it's something that's even remotely final or has to stand on its own, crop it so you can't see the binding. It's really important. So another thing that we see is formatting. So while we're talking about cropping and putting filters on and all of those kinds of things, generally, one of the things I've seen a lot in my time, particularly as a professional, is either too much formatting or not enough. So people tend to kind of go to extremes. So that either says, I've got zero confidence in my work and I'm overcompensating with the presentation method so that you're going to be really impressed. And that's very dangerous, because that means that, it sets up some very high expectations about your work, or you've gone so crazy with the fonts and the formatting that it completely obliterates what you're trying to show. The flip side is, I can't be bothered with this. And it just simply, it might be a default font, it might be a white background, it could be zero formatting that kind of happens. And no matter which way you go, to which extreme, it will always say, I have no appreciation of layout or colour theory or other basic design principles. Now you might argue, yeah, but I'm a technical person, I don't need to know about this. True, but everybody has to showcase their work. And if you're a technical person, even if you're working on things like programming or maybe engineering, you will have to show off what you do to people who are less technical than you. So you need to be able to present your work in a way that says good things about your work. So all of this stuff matters for everybody, not just for artists. So how do you fix this? Well, there are some tips and tricks. The first is to keep the layout simple and clean, but don't just stick with the default. Use things like muted colours and greys. So particularly if you've got images or video thumbnails on your website or in your portfolio, that they can really pop so that there is nothing that's overriding the colours that are already there. Always use a page title if you're doing something that has simple click-through pages, or if it's going to be in a PDF format, always have a title on there for context so that the viewer knows what they're looking at. Also, don't use more than 2 different fonts, and make sure that they're both easily legible. So if you want to do that on screen, having a font without a serif, that's ones without those little sort of tops and bottoms on, a sans serif font is the best one to read on a screen. You always want to neatly align your images, so use guides and rulers and grids and all that kind of stuff. Try not to crowd the page too much with too much information, but do put your info on every page or screen so that no matter what happens, so that anybody could just be walking past a computer of someone who's reviewing your portfolio and go, "That's really cool, who did that?" And then the other person can easily go, "Oh, well, there's the name there at the bottom." And if it's a manager, they might go, "Get in touch with that person because their work's really cool." And it can be as quick as that, as to a yes or a no about getting some feedback. So let's move on then to the 3 rules for a AAA portfolio. The first one is to make it accessible, and that means putting it online. It also means giving it a short URL. So people like Bitly or TinyURL will do that for free so that you can take your huge long URL and make it into something small. Try to use an established platform where you can. There are lots of portfolio sites out there, things like Vimeo if you want to have videos, or ArtStation if you are an artist, particularly if you're working in 3D for movies or for games. But also keep the structure flat for easy navigation. We don't want to have to click through and click and click and click again to sort of go through nested folders. We want to be able to sort of swipe left and right, if you like, so that we can have a look at this stuff really quickly. The second rule is to make your portfolio awesome. And that is again about putting your best work in, but also put it front and center so that if there is a splash page where people click on your tiny URL, that it will just be there. Your best work is there straight away to grab attention. And that means you're tailoring it to your target audience because they get to see what they want to see first. Also, make sure you're showing what your brand is, and if in doubt, leave something out. If you think it might not be on your brand, or it might not be good enough, or that the target user might not be interested, leave it out. If they're interested in you, they can always ask for more work, and that's when you can show it then. And finally, remember that it's an evolving thing. Your portfolio is a snapshot. It's not like a headstone. It's not going to be there, long after you're gone. You are going to keep on changing it and changing it and changing it all the time. And the third rule is keep it neat. And that is to limit the amount of work on there. Try to set yourself a hard limit. I would say between 8 and 16 items, just because it's a nice power of 2 number. But generally, no more than sort of 15, 16 items in your portfolio. Keep it up to date. So that means don't share the older work if you've got newer, better work that's waiting to go on. Keep working on it. If you've done something that you're really proud of, shove it in a folder somewhere that says "for my online portfolio" and then upload it the next time you've got time, because it will be there and it's great to show that off in a hurry. Only show one piece of in-progress work. Too much in-progress work tends to sort of show people that you're not really finishing stuff and that you're leaving lots of projects incomplete, and that of course is a dangerous performance to give. So one piece of in-progress work to show that you're always improving. Also, have a professional contact email. I have seen some really unprofessional ones with funny puns, rude names, cheesy kind of links, something that might be to do with anime. And I'm like, yeah, that's great and stuff, but if that's on your portfolio and if that's the only email that someone's written down for you, you might carry that email burden for 10, 15 years, and that could get quite embarrassing. So make sure that you have a professional contact email. And also, as always get a peer or an expert to review your portfolio on a semi-regular basis and give you some honest feedback about what works and what doesn't. So that's it. That is my talk about portfolios and what you want to do. Here you can see my email if you want to email me for information. You can also contact me on Twitter. And to see if I followed my own rules, you can have a look at this link at ArtStation with K_0 to see if I practice what I preach. And I think I do most of it. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed this. And if you want to get in touch, looking forward to hearing from you. So good luck with your portfolios.